Hey crew, I'm going to finish reading We're Writing the Constitution by Jean Fritz. And if you were here for part 2, we had just left off where a lot of people were saying, hey look, we have these checks and balances within the Constitution and we're going to be okay. We're not going to have one person take all of this power, and here is why. However, there were some people who were still very skeptical, okay? But not all were okay with it. Patrick Henry took one look at the first word of the Constitution and saw red. We, the people, he snorted. Since when had they become a single people? He'd known something hadn't smelled right, and here was this fancy document that, with a single stroke, wiped out the 13 separate identities. Besides, it didn't say one word about those basic rights they had fought a war over. All over the country, people argued about a Bill of Rights. In Connecticut, Noah Webster, educator and compiler of the dictionaries, contended that such a bill would be nonsense. How could you list all the rights a person had, he asked. Would you include the right to go fishing in good weather? The right of people to turn over in bed at night? But most people were serious about the issue, and many were unhappy. Federalists tried to reassure them. Once the government was formed, they pointed out, the Constitution could easily be amended to include those rights that they wanted. All they had to do was recommend improvements and then go ahead and ratify. If they didn't, they'd end up with neither a government nor a Bill of Rights. Delaware started off the state conventions, and on December 7th was the first to ratify the Constitution. Its vote was unanimous, as was New Jersey's on December 18th and Georgia's on January 2nd, 1788. Other states had harder times reaching an agreement. Pennsylvania ratified on December 12th with a vote of 46 to 23. Connecticut on January 9th with a vote of 28 to 40. Massachusetts argued for a month, and although it finally ratified on February 6th, the vote was close. 187 to 168. Maryland came along on April 28th, 63 to 11. In South Carolina on May 23rd, 149 to 73. On June 22nd, New Hampshire was the 9th state to ratify the Constitution, 57 to 47, and with its vote, the United States of America officially became a nation. But people were still anxious for the big states to join so that the new nation would seem more impressive. Virginia was an important state, but if Patrick Henry had his way, it would never have joined. He spoke against the Constitution for 2 weeks, once giving 8 speeches in one day, once speaking all day long. But on June 26th, the Virginia Convention did ratify 89 to 79. 1 month later, on July 26th, New York, which had never been enthusiastic, also voted yes, just 30 to 27. North Carolina, however, voted no, and Rhode Island didn't even bother to hold a convention. When they saw the results of the other elections, they accused the rest of the country of seceding from them. Eventually, they changed their minds. North Carolina joined the Union in November 1789 and Rhode Island in May 1790. But Philadelphia couldn't wait for all the states to come into the Union before celebrating. As soon as Virginia had ratified, Philadelphia got ready for a big 4th of July celebration. Indeed, the grand procession that marched through the city from 8 in the morning until 6 in the evening was so grand, it was a wonder that there were enough people left over to watch. Leading the parade was a herald with a trumpet proclaiming the new age. Riders on horseback carried banners that celebrated everything and every person worth celebrating. A float made to look like a giant blue eagle rolled up the cobblestone streets, followed by an enormous framed Constitution propped in the carriage pulled by 6 white horses. A fancy building with 13 columns representing the new nation was pulled in a vehicle drawn by 10 white horses. Of course, there was music. High-stepping bands, beating and blowing, kept the town tapping to their tunes. And people. 450 architects and carpenters marched in procession. There were sawmakers and fill cutters, Farmers with their 4-ox plows, weavers, tailors, goldsmiths, gunsmiths, brickmakers, clockmakers, boat builders, coopers, bakers, corset makers, and preachers. The Federal Ship Union mounted the 20 guns brought up by the rear of the procession, and everyone ended up at a picnic spread out for 17,000 people. The country may have kicked and screamed its way into becoming a nation, but once there, it celebrated. Bells pealed and cannons roared as the state after state acknowledged that the Constitution they had adopted was now the supreme law of the land. Two of America's most important statesmen, however, were not in the country during any of the constitutional proceedings. John Adams would be our second president, was in England serving as our ambassador. Thomas Jefferson, who would be our third president, was an ambassador to France. When John Adams, just arriving in Boston in 1788, heard of the news that the Constitution had been adopted, he wrote to Jefferson. "As we say at sea," he wrote, "huzzah for the new world and farewell to the old one." And Thomas Jefferson, once he felt satisfied that a Bill of Rights would be included, he called the new Constitution unquestionably the wisest yet ever presented to men. So that is the end of our writing of the Constitution. Now, at the end, it said that we did end up writing that Bill of Rights, which are those first 10 amendments of our Constitution. We're going to continue to dive deeper into our Constitution, starting with our preamble. So, this is our preamble, and it states that we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain establish this Constitution for the United States of America. My 5th grade class has already kind of dissected this preamble and what it means to our country. So forming a more perfect union to make the union of our states stronger. Ensure domestic tranquility, so to make sure that all the people in the states get along with each other and are happy with each other. Promote general welfare. We want to make the U.S. a good place to live. To ourselves and our posterity. We that are living in the U.S. now and all of the people who will come to the U.S. at some point should have all of those. Establish justice. We want to make sure that there is justice for all people. Provide for the common defense. We want to make sure that we can defend our country against any enemies. Secure the blessings of liberty, meaning to make sure that everyone in our country has the liberty with which we have been blessed. And do ordain and establish. Because of all of these reasons, we have agreed to this Constitution of the United States. We establish this Constitution. That is just the preamble, the very beginning of our Constitution, and we will continue to dive in deeper to our Constitution, those Bill of Rights, and so forth in our next video. See you then.